But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Greetings, caged children, toxic game bros, and new UKIP members, and welcome to HBR News number 164. Women and women first? Sounds like HUWITE feminism. I'm your host, Brian Martinez, and I'm here with my esteemed alt-right entitled rape apologizing, room cleaning, incel, red pill Reddit posting, fedora tipping, fascist Pepe loving, Trump supporting, Nazi apologizing, This Is America memeing, women enslaving, poo-poo heads, to look at the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Clam Slam Badger style. Hold on to your Doge coins for the super chats and put on a helmet because the Space Force needs you. I can't believe the Space Force thing. It's too good. Today's poll panel consists of Hannah, sister of No Mercy Wallen, Apothecary Randomer Cam, and me, the Wolf Lord Doge. Battle Brother Mike J is not here right now, but he will be coming in a little bit later. So we happily and with bated breath await his arrival. By the Emperor, we have a great show for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat and in the comments section. On this week's HBR News Show, we will be looking at the latest feminist fashion, how capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal men are ruining poor, widow, innocent, uwu feminists who just want the equalities in their little bookstores, graduating with your waifu, and more. Also, please stick around for the patron-only after show that will be taking place afterwards. I tried to write up a little thing on it, and the only thing I got is this, basically. Autism is a feminist issue now. We're going to find out how autism is now a feminist issue in the after show.
Is it part of everything? That it's a feminist issue.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to be a part of the after show, either as an audience member or a participant, you should become a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. One last thing, we are currently doing a fundraiser. We might be doing a fundraising stream on Friday to get the Badgers to the UK for this year's International Conference on Men's Issues. I've already got a whole lot of interviews lined up, presuming that I can get down there. Mike Buchanan has graciously assisted me in setting all this up. If you don't know who Mike Buchanan is, he is the head of the Justice for Men and Boys down in the UK. He's an awesome dude, and he buys people beers when they meet him. So why wouldn't you want to help us get to Mike Buchanan? So if you want to do that, go to Feed the Badger and go ahead and donate to get the Badgers to the UK. I appreciate that. And now we're going to go ahead and get into the stories. But we already have a super chat. Sierra DeFlora gives us $2 and says, Badger style clam slam, the next convention name. That's right. I actually think of it as more like Badger style clam slam sounds like a special move from Street Fighter to me. That's
Sounds
how
like
I
an
see
entire competitive sport to me.
Yes.
With various divisions, various leagues, and various approaches from different martial artists.
Those various approaches sound kind of interesting.
Yes.
This could be the most censored show on earth.
Could be.
It's mixed martial clam slamming.
All right, so Mike and Hannah, if you guys are looking at the chat, because I can't see it when I'm doing the show. If Mike J shows up, just tell him to come right on in, and don't wait to join in. Just get in here and it'll be fine. All right, so let's get into the stories. First, it's time to get naked for feminism. The prestigious Cambridge College recently held its end-of-term supervisor dinner. Most guests arrived dressed in formal attire, which is to be expected at an event such as this. But not Victoria Bateman. Bateman, who is a fellow in economics at Cambridge, arrived in a sheer see-through onesie with the words, "My body, my choice," scrawled across her chest in marker. Bateman proudly announced on her Twitter she was at the event sporting feminist fashion and that Cambridge stands with and supports her. Of course they do. If you expect that this fashion faux pas might land Bateman in some hot water with the higher-ups at university, well, you'd be wrong. This isn't the first time she's behaved in such a manner. Roughly 1 year ago, at a faculty meeting, she showed up completely nude, this time with the words "Brexit leaves Britain naked" written across her chest in marker. According to a source inside the meeting, quote, "This was a standard meeting about the teaching of economics, and we moved away from her state of dress. We remained silent on that issue and managed to get through the agenda in the meeting." Wow. Talk about stiff upper lip. Interestingly enough, when asked what her reaction would be if a male colleague pulled a stunt similar to hers, Bateman responded, "If a man protested because of a need to fight for rights over his body, then I'd say go for it." So at the least, she seems to be an equal opportunity nudist.
Having said that, this is why they're invading us, folks. They look at shit like this and go, you see what these evil Western white men do to women. This is why they're invading us, folks. I don't know what to do about it. I'm just bitching.
Fair enough. Hannah, do you have any thoughts?
I don't know. I think maybe she might scare them away. Oh, jeez, oh, Pete.
Thank you to Mike J for the censorship. We didn't want to get demonetized. I mean, or have our channels taken down. So thank you for the little piglet faces, guys. Those are there to censor that she doesn't actually have little pig faces coming out of her breasts.
Oh, I thought that was just, the usual for feminism.
All right.
What this does though is like coming in with basically naked, because she's got this see-through thing on with "My body, my choice" scrawled on her body. What she's basically saying there is it's her choice to inflict her body on other people unwanted because it's her body and her choice. So other people don't get a choice. Other people don't get to say, "No, I don't want that. Like, get it away from me." I'm not interested in looking at that. I'm not interested in touching that. Get it away from me, because her body, her choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty characteristic of feminism, if you ask me.
Fair point. Fair point indeed. All right. So I guess we'll move on to the next story. So, pay no attention to the flop behind the curtain. This is all credit to Mike J. Thank you, Mike J. Sorry that you're not here to read them. It's no secret that Solo, a Star Wars story, was a commercial failure due to a number of factors, like it being a shit movie. But none of that is important right now. The bigger issue is, at the moment, a woman might have possibly had some very mean words said to her on the internet. Quick, burn the Constitution. Stop the internet from happening. A woman had her fifis hurt. The woman in question is Kelly Marie Tran, better known for her role as Rose Tico in Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Tran recently, and with no specific reason given, deleted every photo from her Instagram account. The suspected reason given by those looking on from the sidelines is harassment at the hands of angry, evil, racist, sexist, white male misogynist trolls. At least that's what's being reported. The truth is, it's hard to know what was actually happening on Tran's Instagram account because, as previously mentioned, it's been scrubbed clean and Tran herself is not commenting.
Diagnosis: rage quit.
That's what it looks like. Something made her pee mad and she quit. But here's the thing, though. I just want to clear the air. There's no evidence out there at all that says that she left because of misogynist trolls on the internet. Now, she may come out later and claim that's what it was. But according to the screenshots that people have been sharing around, her Instagram was overwhelmingly supportive and positive, which I imagine is most people's social media accounts. There was only one source that claimed to have been responsible or took credit for, much in the same way that ISIS does, that took credit for driving her off the internet. And it was this one, I think it was called End Star Wars Twitter account or something, that had like 40 or 50 followers. They took credit for driving her off social media. And because of that one account, that's become the narrative that has spread everywhere. And the fact is, that account hadn't been around for very long, didn't have a lot of followers. It's extremely fishy looking. I'm starting to like get these flashbacks of Gamergate and other similar sort of incidents where
Men's rights Reddit.
Yeah, men's rights Reddit, whatever, where people supposedly get attacked and driven away, and the person who did it is really small and unknown. But for some reason, new, but for some reason, the mainstream media is all over it, and it actually went all the way, like Stephen Colbert made a bid on it, and, you know, all these other, all of a sudden, that's the story now, you know? So...
But you gotta understand, in this one unique instance, it is totally reasonable to believe a troll's story about what happened on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Totally reasonable. At any other time, you know, I'm shocked that you don't realize this. Any other time, obviously, trolls are lying and full of crap, and anybody that says anything that you disagree with are trolls, of course. But if somebody claims to have bullied a woman off of the internet, well, by golly, they're telling the truth. You know, that's just the rule. That's everybody knows, right? That trolls always tell the truth when the thing that they are saying is, I bullied a woman off the internet.
Also note the irony that the website is called Think, but the name of the article is, after racist Star Wars fans reportedly drove Kelly Marie Tran from Instagram, Disney needs to respond yesterday. But again, nobody's thinking, because there's no, that they should call it feel, really, because there's no evidence. And some people say that Disney, the Disney Corporation, said that Kelly Marie Tran should close her Instagram account for whatever reason. But it is actually really convenient, and this is one of the reasons why I believe Mike J pointed out the title, Pay No Attention to the Flop Behind the Curtain. The timing of this abuse came out and it gave the mainstream media and Disney and all the actors involved something to talk about, aside from the fact that the last Star Wars movie was an enormous failure, that nobody went and nobody wanted to see it. It didn't make much money. It certainly isn't getting its money back. And that's terrible for a fucking Star Wars movie. So it's interesting timing. There's no evidence, guys. So if you keep hearing about racist Star Wars fans, there's no evidence of it. And the media is attacking the fan base like nonstop right now. So,
well, just, somebody says something like that, you ask for a link to the actual, some kind of an archive of an actual group of Star Wars fans behaving that way. Not somebody's news reporting on it, but an actual archive or an actual tweet or Facebook post that shows multiple Star Wars fans, long-term Star Wars fans, behaving that way.
And bearing in mind the size of the pool we're dealing with here, like the bigger your audience, the more likely you are to stumble across a total obsessive retard. And there aren't many audiences bigger than the Star Wars audience.
Exactly. It's a matter of scale. Like you can clearly find, if you look for it, you'll find some actual racist, misogynist people or whatever, but it's a matter of scale. It's a matter of, is this enough to bother with? But it can be handy. The media only needs like one or two. Hell, that happened when The Force Awakens was coming out. There were like a couple of, Vox Day fans that made posts talking about how they didn't want to watch the movie because of the black lead, specifically for that reason. And they were gonna boycott the movie, and there was a hashtag boycott Star Wars or something, and it really didn't take off. But the media didn't have a problem latching onto it to use it for leverage to sell tickets, really. And yeah, so it's this sort of stuff happens everywhere in every fandom for every reason, but it's a matter of what does the media choose to latch onto? What in what way do they make it useful to their narrative, you know, like, and Star Wars is like Mike said, it's so big that of course you're going to find some obsessive retards. But I mean,
well, and
they still have to make
what percentage, you know, what percentage of Star Wars fandom is this? Is this one person that you're talking about, or is this a whole? Because that's why I said a group, because if you just go with one person, that's not representative of the group.
Not at all. A group isn't even representative of the fandom. So
no, it's like, not.
Ask yourself how much money did, you know, the last successful Star Wars movie make, and how many tickets is that, and then therefore how many people is that, and then how many of the of those people are bitching, like of a pool of that size. It's probably minuscule. You know,
and how many of the people that are bitching have a history that shows that they have been, you know, Star Wars fans, and they're been talking about Star Wars regularly.
And how many of the people that are bitching for legitimate reasons, like it's a shit film, versus the ones that are doing it for supposedly the bigoted reasons that the article is trying to attach itself to. And I think that you'll find that it's really, really small. So. All right, let me see if there's no new super chats. What the fuck, guys? All right, so anyway, that's fine. Moving on to the next story. Portland needs so many vagina pillows. The bookstore... Oh, well, we should probably listen to this clip first so you guys get a little bit of context.
For Valerie.
You want this vagina pillow?
I don't want that vagina pillow. We have so many. We have 13 vagina pillows. My entire bed looks like a bunch of women exploded on it.
That's one room. So there's other rooms in the house that you could...
You just give each other vagina pillows every Christmas?
I don't need a vagina pillow.
No one does.
So, the bookstore and non-profit organization. You guys might know that clip, by the way. That's from Portlandia. It was a popular comedy show with lots of little skits in it. And you may remember that we did a story on this before. So there's a bookstore and non-profit organization called In Other Words, which was used as a set for the fictional Women and Women First bookstore in the comedy Portlandia. They have announced that they are closing. A woman's place is in the struggle. That's a real thing that they say.
Let's not forget what we translate struggle to. It directly translates to the word camp and the word jihad.
Yes.
And people are still saying that shit unironically, you know.
So if a business fails, a conservative business or a men's business fails during an administration, you know, like the Obama administration, it's not because of bad policy, it's capitalism's fault. But if a woman's business fails, it's misogynistic. It's because people just don't love women.
Mm-hmm. They hate them. So let me like reestablish what's going on here. So we had an actual bookstore called In Other Words, and the TV show Portlandia used the actual store as a set for their ongoing Women and Women First bookstore sketches. The Women and Women First bookstore was a feminist bookstore. It was like one of the funniest things on there because they made fun of feminism. These two women that ran the place, they were caricatures of feminists, or at least they were supposed to be caricatures of feminists, but they were more on the nose than the people who made the show probably realized, which makes it even funnier. So what happened to the feminist bookstore? All right, from the blog post. After 25 years, In Other Words is closing at the end of 2018 of June. Some reasons for the closure are increased expenses and the lack of funds, volunteers, and board members. This is a cycle of, in other words, as an organization, and also the cycle of community spaces in capitalism. In other words, periodically discusses closing because of a lack of money and people. This isn't sustainable, especially emotionally, for the people who come here and work to provide this space as a resource to Portland feminist communities. Even if funds poured in and masses of people showed up in response to this announcement, we would not continue our tenure here. So, in other words, is a real feminist bookstore. It's not a caricature. We cannot continue because we know reform does not work. The current volunteers and board members stepped into and took over a space that was founded on white cis feminism. Read white supremacy. It's really difficult, actually impossible for us to disentangle from that foundational ideology. Volunteers and board members tried to reform and re-envision the organization and have found it unattainable to do, especially with so little resources. We have experienced this as a very real reminder that reform doesn't work. Patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism cannot be reformed and ever serve the people. Abolition is the goal.
Wait. No pun intended. But in other words, they came in and they took over a previously successful business, and they tried to make feminist intersectionality the way that they directed that business. They tried to base their business entirely on Marxist progressive politics, and it failed. And they were blaming,
because Marxist business is an oxymoron.
They're blaming the things that are capitalist for the failure of a business that is based on the politics of opposing business.
Yeah.
It's amazing that so many of these people exist. It's like a gene that tries to destroy itself. Like, how have you not wiped yourselves out already? It's because you're very persuasive, I guess, to young impressionable minds.
Gonna go start coaching a cross-country team and tell them that they have to stop all this running, because running should not be the focus of the cross-country team, and they definitely need to change their outlook and become more inclusive of people who like to crochet.
I would have
how many races they win.
Yeah, I would have thought that the feminist bookstore sketch would be used as a cautionary tale against making your business feminist, because they never sold anything. Like, that was the joke. Nobody ever bought anything from them. They didn't get along with anybody. They hated everyone that came in there. They were funny because of it. You're not supposed to actually try to make this real, but it gets better. It gets better, guys. All right. However, let me see. Did I read that bit? Oh, yeah. The Critical Response Portland, a group of prison industrial complex abolitionists, are working to keep the shop open as a community center. Back in 2016, the store cut ties with the show Portlandia and placed a "Fuck Portlandia" sign in their window. We did a story on this. The anti-capitalist bookstore staff argues in a blog post that the show didn't make them money, that the show is trans-antagonistic because it wasn't inclusive enough, and trans-misogynist, and that gentrification isn't a joke. Anti-capitalist bookstore staff.
We do not want to make any money. Why can't we keep our store open? I don't understand. What's wrong with the world?
So, however, the response garnered kickback from their own communities, as some pointed out. The bookstore itself was the epitome of gentrification. In other words, staff were quick to apologize and placate. One commenter wrote, "You need to shut down your business and hand over the keys to black owners and distribute 100% of the revenue to your bookstore has ever made over the years directly to marginalized people in the black community. Only then will your apology be worth anything." And on top of that, they actually replied and said, we did do that. Like, they actually gave their business to black owners because they were gentrifying and they were the product of white feminism. And this is so I guess I gotta add this on here. This is the reason why I don't like playing the feminism is a white woman thing card too much, because it seems to give the intersectional feminists a reason to exist. And so you get like the black feminists and the brown feminists and the Muslim feminists and whatever, the ones that identify as non-racial. I'm sure that those are a thing, or they're going to be, because it's all crazy. Like it's just all crazy. So
yeah, I think of feminism as just the European word for this sort of post-industrial European word for politicized gynocentrism, which wasn't invented by white people, I don't think. Arguably, it's sort of woven into monotheistic religions in a way. The particular monotheistic religions that have been dominant in this and similar parts of the world for the past few thousand years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
the seeds were already there in a way.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure.
I think it's kind of woven into the psyche of humanity. Actually, it basically is how one group others and dehumanizes another group that they want to, if not dominate, then at the very least remain separate from, and not allow into their country, their spaces, their whatever, is politicized gynocentrism. And this is almost like this gets worse, because intersectional feminism takes gynocentrism and mixes in the progressive stack victim narrative and makes a whole set of minute little rules. They like micromanage the whole thing. And I really hope intersectional feminism has a lot of napkins, because watching feminists eat their own movement at this point, it's already starting to get messy. They're going to need them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next story. But I thought that one is just too funny. The women and women first thing. If you haven't seen it, go check out Portlandia clips on YouTube. They're pretty funny. And then as you watch that, think about how the parody is less crazy than the reality in that actual bookstore, in that spot. Also, Portlandia did do a thing about MRAs, but I never saw it. I remember they teased it when they were doing a new season. I'm kind of curious to see what they're gonna talk about, because they made fun of feminists. So, all right, next story. Loser or legend? Ryan Nagai Tai, resident of Pomona, California, recently graduated with a bachelor's degree from California State Polytechnic University in quite the unusual manner. As he accepted his diploma, he made sure not to drop his body pillow, which sported the image of Nico Yazawa from the anime Love Live. I never heard of it, but whatever. Despite how you may personally feel about Tai, he seems to have earned some measure of fame online, with several Twitter users commenting. This man is a legend. The man is dedicated to his waifu, a true hero. Well, he had to bring his best girl with him. I was actually there in the audience when I saw that. What a legend. So I just thought this was a funny story of a guy who graduated with his waifu pillow, and considering what we've seen, to be honest, with all the stuff going on in with the stuff just going on with Me Too and everything else, maybe waifu pillows aren't looking so bad as an option for people. They don't screw you over in the family courts, and I don't know.
It's like a sign that incels are slowly being accepted, one baby step at a time.
Have a horrible prediction.
It's not quite Tiananmen Square, but it's Yeah, it's one for the calendar.
2D women are
Yeah.
the best women. So
I have a horrible prediction though. So
Yeah.
like we've seen media coming out and talking about these inanimate objects that have, you know, female appearance or whatever, as I guess rape culture items, you know, items, hallmarks of rape culture, with the idea that they encourage rape somehow, that an inanimate object that does not have a will and cannot have its will violated somehow trains young men to be okay with committing rape or something like that.
oh, I can't
Um,
wait. I can't wait. I
they're gonna
can't
come out
wait
and
for the body pillow art hit piece article that
oh yeah.
Jezebel inevitably writes. I can't wait.
Oh, my prediction is that at some point feminists are going to come out as representatives as of the poor, innocent, maligned, abused, raped, inanimate objects that don't feel anything or have experiences of their own to worry about. It'll become, don't you have sympathy? Don't you care about women? It's misogynistic of you to treat this inanimate object like an inanimate object. You're objectifying the inanimate object. How dare you? That's gonna be the next step. When they can't convince people that their rape practice for would be sexual predators, that's gonna be the next step.
Yeah, not only can you not have guns or knives, but if you're a man, you can't even have a pillow, because a pillow is the gateway to a waifu pillow, and the waifu pillow is a gateway to a sex robot, and the sex robot is a gateway to rape. So no cushions either, no pillows.
Oh, they don't even need that to be a gateway anymore. It'll be you are victimizing this inanimate object. This inanimate object is a victim because you're a man.
Exactly. All right. So the other thing I wanted to say, oh yeah, I'm gonna ask the chat about this. Is this guy a loser or a hero for bringing his waifu pillow to graduation? Also, are waifu pillows wholesome? Because it seems pure and wholesome to me, and safe. Now I'm gonna read
like
your
to-
super
they
chat.
like security.
If there's holes in your waifu pillow, that might be a problem.
They're like security blankets, right? A child needs a security blanket because they're a child, and an incel needs a waifu because they're not quite getting as much as they'd like. Maybe I don't know. It's not the same as a security blanket. It's an adult version.
Somebody in the chat said if she breathes, she's a thought. So that means that waifu pillows are not, because they can't breathe. So they're probably that. There it is. We've just answered the question. All right, so I got some
Oh
super
my god,
chats.
he's suffocating it.
But
that evil man.
You can use a waifu pillow to suffocate someone else. Perhaps
There
a
you
thought.
go.
Just double homicide.
Yeah. All right. Swimming Hole Darkwing gives us $5 and says, "We had a Marxist cafe here and it failed. They blamed capitalism for the failure. Truth was, no one wanted to pay $5 to wait 40 minutes for a latte." What the fuck? Were they growing the beans? How the fuck did it take 40 minutes for a latte? Frank
Maybe
Tomeo.
they were selling it from a trailer or something.
Yeah. Was it a latte line? Is that the were you standing in the line for it? Okay. Frank Tomeo gives us $2 Canadian and says it probably would be messy to eat your movement. Yes. Well, feminists don't have a problem eating shit. And Cyberzerk gives us 50 sex and says feminism is a psyops, but it does the most damage and has the least resistance, where gynocentrism is as strongest. Scandinavia. So, well, yeah, feminism is a name for something that's a lot older than feminism, is what I think. It's just something that we've named, but it's way older. All right. So, moving on to the next story. Thank you for that bit. It puts a smile on my face to see the our waifu champion dude. So I'm going to move on to the next story as soon as I can find my notes. Where are my notes? Here it is. All right. So This one is a bit of a two-parter. In the latest drama unfolding since the announcement trailer for the latest addition into the Battlefield series, Naughty Dog game developer Boone Cotter attacked some of the critics of, well, it was Last of Us 2 by saying, if you're so socially and culturally inept that the option to play a video game as a female gets you all worked up in a frothy nerd rage, my name is Boone, I make games, but not for people like you. Your kind is done, mate. Do everyone a favor and fuck off. You're embarrassing. And he tweeted, this is at his fans. The most cringeworthy aspect of all this shit is the ridiculous narrative that game developers are all held to ransom by the oppressive chokehold of the SJW agenda. Truth, we actually want to make good games, inclusive games, games that disregard your toxic game bro bullshit. I didn't know we were all game bros. Because of these comments, people criticize him for widening the rift on an already divided issue. Carter responded with, quote, hang on, I'm telling people who are frothy nerd rage to go fuck themselves. The type who comment fucking gay, gross, and SJW propaganda on our trailer. Surely you know the type. They're pretty hostile. It seemed an appropriate response. Sorry if you took this personally. Boone did apologize to another Twitter user saying, quote, thanks for the kind words. I'm sorry you felt personally targeted. I posted in anger and it muddied my message and I regret that. But trust me, from all evidence, you're not remotely who I was angry at. But they do exist and sadly some of us have to deal with them daily.
There's no point in getting angry with those kind of mobs. It's like we were talking about last week. It's like hate. It's like the idea of it being logical to hate. It's like it's no more logical to hate a shark or a spider than it is to hate any kind of human being. This was the whole point of Moby Dick. Is no point holding a grudge against an animal because animals don't give a shit about anything, and you can't do anything about how they think. And large crowds are like animals. They're just there. They just have a nature.
Yeah.
And you just can't fucking get angry at them. Just do what you do.
I just want to point out a couple of little things. I'm not done with the write-up on this, but I want to go back and point out a couple of things that I think are important. One, he claims that... What does he say? Oh, yeah. I'm targeting people who say things like frothy nerd... Or, I'm sorry. Fucking gay, gross, and SJW propaganda. Okay, so fucking gay, gross is one thing. But SJW propaganda is not the same thing. People who are concerned about SJW propaganda entering their mediums, they are justified in doing so. If you look at the history of what happens when that stuff gets in there, it ruins everything. And the main reason why is not because there are gay characters or whatever types of people in the game. It's because that becomes such an important focus on why they are doing what they're doing that they stop making a good product. And they think that they can compensate. The female Ghostbusters is a perfect example of that. They thought that they could just change the characters into women and they wouldn't have to tell a good story. They wouldn't have to have good jokes. They wouldn't have to do anything. And they could approach it from a feminist perspective and make it good. And the problem is their ideology got in the way of making something good because they thought they did good enough. Black Panther is the same deal. I think it's one of the weakest. I bought it anyway, but I think it's one of the weakest products because the ideology got in the way of good storytelling and good action and good entertainment. So to say SJW propaganda, there's nothing hateful or bigoted about it. Now, fucking gay, gross, that I'd need to see the context, but yeah, sure, that could be seen that way, but those are not the same. Plus, to go back and, support what Mike is saying, if you lash out at your fan base because a few people said things you don't like, and you had not considered where that might be coming from, then you're not doing yourself any favors because you're gonna piss off everybody. And most people that see stuff like that, they ignore it. They say, this guy's not gonna buy it, so what? As far as The Last of Us goes, the whole Ellie is gay thing, which is what the kiss that they did in the trailer. I mean, I knew that because they showed it to us like with the DLC on the first game years ago. And I mean, I thought the DLC was weak. Personally, I didn't think it was that good. Not because of the gay thing. It just wasn't that much. Like, it wasn't adding that much to the game. And I thought that the gay story stuff just felt like it was tacked on. And in a way, I felt like I was told that I should like it more because of it. But I didn't think the game itself wasn't a really great add-on. So I was sort of torn because I really liked that game, but I didn't really like the DLC that much. And so, sure, they were going to continue on with that. I didn't really care. I'm pretty positive that the game will still be good, but I can understand why people would have that reaction because of the history of this stuff that's been happening. And fans are going to be fans. Sometimes you're going to, get angry ones that want, they don't like the direction you've taken, or they start to make assumptions about the direction you've taken, which I think is the case with The Last of Us. But at the end of the day, if you let what appears to be, I wouldn't even say it's a loud minority, what appears to be a loud minority, because there are people who are sensitive to negative comments, and if they can't see the positive comments or the indifferent ones, and then get an idea of scale, like in turn or scope, like, okay, there are some people who said some mean things, but what's the overall reaction? Sometimes we get bad comments on our videos, right? People who troll us, or they insult us, or whatever. And I try to read all the comments, and I see the negative ones, but the fact is, I don't let it bother me, because a lot of times, they're legitimate grievances, or there's a misunderstanding or miscommunication, and they're also in the minority. So, I mean, I'm like grateful that most of what we get is people that are engaged in the discussion, or they're sharing their own experiences, or they're sharing additional information, but they're not necessarily being, aggressive. But if they were, I wouldn't care, because again, it's like, this is the internet. Like, are you new to it? That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is, when you say, I'm sorry you took this personally, that's a non-apology. That's not an apology. You're basically saying, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way is not an apology. If somebody says that to you, they're not apologizing. They're basically saying, I wish you didn't react to the thing that I did in the way that you did, but I'm not going to change what I'm doing, right? So that's a non-apology. That doesn't necessarily mean that he should apologize. It's just because maybe he shouldn't, own what you said. But at the same time, don't pretend like you've, apologized when you actually haven't. So
it's also an interesting degree of projection there. I'm sorry you took this personally.
Yeah.
When what was he reacting to?
Mm-hmm.
But comments on the internet from people that honestly he doesn't even know what degree of fandom they are. When you like you were saying, when you create something like any kind of content, any kind of product for people to use, you're going to get comments from people, and there are people who just make shit comments like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know there are people that just make shit comments like that without necessarily any purpose behind them, other than to say, this is shit, and I'm saying it because I want you to hear me say this is shit. And gee, there were trolls on the internet. I'm shocked. And apparently so is he. And apparently he cannot deal with that. Sorry he took it personally.
Pretty much. I mean, again, he doesn't get the whole picture. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's like this growing animosity towards these male fan bases. Like, it's, I put the story in there because it connects to the Ellie Tran story, which connects to almost every week. There's like, there's some other geekdom that's being shit on by the people that the geeks within the geekdom actually sign the checks of. Because that's effectively what it is. Like,
Wait, you mean if you treat people like dirt under their feet, they might object?
Yeah.
Vehemently?
Yeah, and they might stop giving you money.
Repeatedly?
Yes. Exactly.
I'm shocked.
I know, it's crazy. It's like this crazy idea that, geeks with money, and they usually do end up making some good money, because they tend to pursue interests that can be lucrative. They want to spend their money on your shit. You don't have to be their friend, but you should give them what they want. And so you're not entitled to feel comfortable with your fans. They're not necessarily your fans, they're the fans of your products. If something is happening, this is the thing that I don't get, okay? If there's a negative reaction to something that you've created, a person who really is looking to satisfy their fan base would investigate what it is that they're taking umbrage with and try to figure out why that is. But it seems like there more and more, there's just people dismissing it out of hand, like, they're just ragey fanboy nerd losers that hate women and minorities. Fuck them. And it's like, that's not a sufficient approach, because you're not helping yourself, dude. There's a reason why Solo failed. It's because you guys attacked the fans when they criticized your other movies, which justifiably should have been criticized because they were shit. There's a reason why, you know, the buying power of fans is not to be underestimated. You know, like it seems like you're being given permission, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're mostly men. I think that that's a big part of it. It's like you're told, well, they're just men, fuck them. You don't have to, like, make them happy. They have privilege. We get to go watch our privileged version of the Star Wars movie that we actually wanted, or we get to play our privileged version of the game we wanted to play, or whatever. That's not the way this actually works, you know? And it seems like they want, and I'm saying this for their sake, because at the end of the day, the fanboys and the audience, more accurately, because there are girls too that probably feel the same way, that play video games and watch movies. The fan base is not going anywhere. They're just going to give their money to somebody else. They're just going to not give their money to you. And if this is the way you respond, is with rage instead of curiosity, well, then you probably deserve everything that you got coming. But that's the thing I don't get. Like, if it was a female, let's say it was there were people making a product for an audience that had a large female fan base. Like, that was the overwhelming majority. Let's say it was the new Twilight movie, like another series of Twilight movies. Or if they were doing somebody who was famous for writing romance novels, you know, or something that is women dominated, is what I'm getting at, okay? If that person made a change and the women responded negatively and they raged online and they complained, and that person turned around and attacked the women and said it's their fault and fuck you guys, and you don't, you know, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do and I don't care what you think, they would lose money. But I don't think that anyone would do that. They wouldn't attack the women that buy their products. They would just give them what they want. I mean, have you ever asked yourself why when it comes to products that are available for women's consumption, there's so much variety? I mean, just in anything, clothes, hygiene products, you know, they get them whatever they want because they want to please them, and they actually take an interest in what the audience, the consumer base, desires. Men generally, we're easy to please most of the time when it comes to those sides of things, but when it comes to the things that we are really enthusiastic about, then we can be really critical. But you know what? We live in a capitalist society, so you have to give the people what they want. I mean, you don't have to, but if you don't, you're not going to do very well. It's not a wise move. So.
Yeah, and overall, address the argument, not the arguer. That's the sort of the point of avoiding ad hominem. If you know what that is, address the argument, not the man. No matter who is making an argument, nothing matters except the argument. I just said it's pointless addressing a crowd, in the way it's as pointless as it is to address an animal. It's sort of it's all for show. But having said that, there's not much point to addressing an individual human either, if the only thing you have a problem with is an argument that they've made, or indeed that lots of people have made. Arguments exist in the air, in the ether. You can address them at any time without being in the least bit personal about it. So address the argument, not the man. You'll still get fanboys getting butthurt insisting that this is all about the man, even though you didn't mention it. But they'll calm down after a couple of days.
There you go. All right, Mike J has joined us. Mike J, I am sorry that that was an issue on my end with the basically when I set up the show, I didn't realize that it was defaulted to Mountain Time because I operate in Central Time, and I didn't see it until like I was sitting down to get ready to start, and that's when I moved it because I was like, well, that's wrong, you know, and I was wondering why nobody was around. So, are you there?
Indeed, I am.
Okay. All right. Cool. So you missed some of it. I apologize for that. That's my bad. Because I should have looked at the time zone thing. So, what were we gonna say?
I just wanted to throw in real quick at the tail end of this story. Last of Us 2, if it's going to be anything like the first one, very, very strong day one rent, but I think Days Gone looks a hell of a lot better.
Days Gone?
Yeah, it's the open world biker guy one.
Oh,
looks
okay.
Very
okay.
similar. Also PS4 exclusive.
I know the one. That one. They teased that one like a year ago, right? With the zombies and stuff. Yeah, that does look good. I liked the first Last of Us a lot. But I see what you're saying because it's like it tells a story. So if it has multiplayer, that might, depending on the size of the community, might make for some replay. Yeah, I don't remember
anyone playing it.
I didn't play the multiplayer. I just liked the story. I think that the multiplayer felt sort of tacked on, I think. But if they do, what I would like to see, I don't know if they will do this, but what I think would be really great is if The Last of Us 2 had co-op. I think a co-op mode would be, because I love co-op stuff. I think that would be a good thing to add on. But, just to sort of nail home, the game, Naughty Dog is a really good developer, and they make games I really like. So
yeah, they do.
It pains me to see them. Yeah, it pains me to see them shitting on the fan base because of a few, people online that took issue with what was there, and they didn't. Again, it's like there's a difference between saying I don't like this because there are gay people in it, and I don't like this because it looks like social justice warrior propaganda, which I've seen a lot of. And I know that's the only reason why people have that response is they say, well, I used to read Marvel comics. I used to watch Star Wars films. I used to like Star Trek. I used to enjoy Pathfinder. I used to enjoy Warhammer 40K. I used to like all these different things. And, feminist shit crept in and ruined it all. And this is just another example. And maybe they're wrong about that. But you have to, understand why they feel that way and then try to address their arguments and say, oh, I see what you mean. However, here is the history of the game and why we're doing it this way and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to still enjoy it. Trust me. It's like if somebody complained that Lara Croft was in a Tomb Raider game. Well, maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't know the history of Lara Croft. You say, well, she's always been the main character of these games, blah, blah, blah. So, but to attack people, it's not going to do you any favors. It's not a good business move, is what I'm saying. So, moving on with the rest of the article here. So EA's chief executive also had some words for the Battlefield fans. He said, hey, these are people who are uneducated. They don't understand that this is a plausible scenario. And listen, this is a game, and today's gaming is gender diverse, like it hasn't been before. Bullshit. There have been female protagonists in games since forever, and there have been gay characters in games too, or at least characters that don't even have a sexuality. I mean, why do we assume that Mario is straight just because he rescues the princess? He doesn't get anything out of it, and when she kisses him, it's on the cheek. A lot of gay men get kissed on the cheek by women.
And why do we assume Luigi is his brother?
Yeah.
Maybe there's something else going on there.
They don't even look alike that much. I mean, do
taller.
you think all Italians look the same? Is that what you're saying? But
the thing that bothers me isn't whether or not these characters, it's just that it matters whether or not these characters are gay or straight or male or female or black or white or any other combination of factors. It doesn't matter. What matters is they make it political. It's that they make the game being about this political, or they make the movie or the book or the whatever else they're invading political, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants that kind of politics in their or they're not their information, but their entertainment. And it doesn't even, it's not even to say that politics must be excluded entirely, but when that is the only thing that the game has going for it, when it's the most prominent feature, when it's shoved down your throat instead of subtly communicated in such a way as to reach people, rather than knock them to the ground, or rather than get up in their face about it, it stops being fun, and it stops being interesting, and it stops being worth looking at and worth doing.
The idea has been floated that Mario is not gay, but Dr. Mario is, and I like that. I like that's a compromise.
Well, I can understand that Mario,
they're different people, and Dr. Mario's
yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mario is just like a blue collar, worker. He does plumbing. He took a trade, and that's probably more of a a heterosexual pursuit, because sometimes you just gotta like do a trade. And Dr. Mario had a lot more free time. He didn't have women, getting in the way of his education. He went and got his PhD, so I could see it. So, all right. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, badass women. That's right. We were talking about that. Gender diverse, like it hasn't been before. There are a lot of female people who want to play and male players who want to play as badass women. And we don't take any flack. We stand up for the cause, because I think those people who don't understand it, well, you have two choices. Either accept it or don't buy the game. I'm fine with either, or it's just not okay.
Well, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, really. I was never really into the Battlefield thing anyways. As far as that goes. So, but as far as, this is just a big virtue signal. They're not saying anything that, at all. There's no substance to the statement, because we know that there have been women in games. Actually, it's funny that what Hannah was talking about, that they just became political. And I think there's probably, I haven't looked at the evidence of this, but I would guess that as video games became more immersive and had more realistic graphics, and they moved away from the pixel stuff and into the 3D realm of polygons and whatnot, as it headed in that direction, they became more political, because as the games became more realistic, then the ability to depict people or different genders or whatever more accurately sort of rose up. When the original Tomb Raider came out and Lara Croft had effectively a wedge for a chest, and that was the main signifier that she was female, because everything else looked just like a series of blocks, I don't think they could have politicized it as much. So they just made a good game, and Tomb Raider was a good game. But I think now, when you can you get Hollywood actors to do the voice acting, you can do motion capture and all this other stuff. It's become way more narrative driven, because you can do more with the graphics engines. And so as it's become more narrative driven, it's become more ideological. And that's why I think some of the best games are the ones that don't even need a story. They just need a premise, or enough story to get you going, so you don't have to creep any of that shit in there. And that's why I still play Dark Souls. So,
well, I think we'll always be able to enjoy the phenomenon of bad game dialogue. They get actors in that either don't know how to do it, or that I imagine it's a very grinding job, because you probably have to sit there for 12 hours a day for a couple of days doing all of these different things, and you have no idea the context you're saying them in, so it just all comes out as terribly acted. And I think that's always going to happen, no matter how much effort they put into narrative.
You were almost a Jill sandwich. All right, I got some super chats that I kind of neglected, so let's see here. Oh, this is two more. Joe the Bull gives us $5 and says, all potential waifus rejected me. Press F to pay respects. Some dumb jerk gives us $2. I'm not insulting him, that's his name. Says, Jackie Treehorn treats objects like women, man. All right. So let us move on to, well, basically we're at the last story. Well, did somebody want to say something? I heard it.
I was just struggling with my mute button, which ruins the joke. I was going to ask if that was reverse objectification.
Yes. What happens when you treat objects like women? It's probably still sexist.
There you go.
Yeah, it's definitely still sexist. What am I talking
You're
about?
you're womanifying those objects.
There you go. But it's okay to treat objects like men.
It's just called subjectification, right? It's just not considered a toxic masculine problem. In fact, it's not even mentioned. It's not even considered a phenomenon to subjectify things. Even though we do it all the time, it's one of the weirdest features we have as humans. We subjectify the fuck out of everything. We name boats after women. We very often name countries after women.
That's true. Mother Russia. Maybe that was not the best example.
Even when we talk about England going to war, England, she will win. She will come out on top. England, and we refer to justice as a woman and liberty as a woman. There's another bunch of things that we refer to as male deities. We're not that far from the Romans and the Greeks in a way. We do have sort of totemic, almost animistic representations of different phenomena. I don't know how I got onto this. Someone else talk.
Subjectification.
Well, it was the subjectification thing, but then again, maybe that's all subjective.
There you go. Oh, boy, that sounds like I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed your Father's Day. You sexist bastards. All right, so this Father's Day, men are experiencing a crisis of masculinity. The solution? More feminism. Men experience violence and oppression because gender norms are not changing. In other words, feminism isn't killing men. Toxic masculinity is. It's not our fault, guys.
Gender norms aren't changing. Gender norms aren't changing. It's slowly becoming considered normal for children to get fucking hormone replacement therapy because they feel like a different gender. And you're telling me gender norms are not changing? Yes, they fucking are. They're kind of melting into a puddle that's fucking oxidizing through the floor like that weird substance in Superman 3.
Yeah. Well,
it's what you call the gender fluid.
So, gender norms are not changing. In other words, feminism is not killing men. Toxic masculinity is. The opinion piece starts off Kathy Newmaning Dr. Jordan Peterson's point, claiming his recommendation of enforced monogamy implies men are oppressed due to a lack of consensual sex. The author, Noah Berlatsky, ties this in with Dr. Peterson's defenders believing that feminism has set men adrift. Berlatsky argues the problem is not tyrannous feminist women, but powerful men who enforce oppressive masculine expectations.
Like feminism.
Bringing up statistics, our author can't help sticking in his men oppressed by lack of sex straw man. Quote, men are the victims of 3/4 of suicides in the United States. This isn't because feminists have successfully carried out a campaign to keep men from having sex. Rather, male suicide rates are tragically high because of traditional stereotypical standards of manliness.
No, they're not.
Happy Father's
Day. Do they realize they have any clue? Obviously, they don't have any clue of the fact that there are numerous men who commit suicide because they are not allowed to be the fathers they want to be. Their children are yanked away from them. Their ability to provide for themselves and their family at the same time is wrecked by a state that is bent on breaking up their families and becoming a daddy substitute in terms of who is in charge of the family and who the mother turns to for pretty much everything, aside from wanting money from her ex-husband's wallet. She certainly doesn't want him there around the kids, and this state allows that, and the state even supports that and helps with that. That leads to a significant amount, an egregiously significant amount of male suicide, some of which has been very public, and every time it happens, feminists come out and blame the victim every single time. They call him an abuser. It's abusive to care so much about your relationship with your children that you become broken when they are ripped away from you, if you're a man.
Yeah, it's not that men are oppressed due to lack of sexual expression or anything. They can still wank. They can still chuck the chicken and shit. Well, except in those regions where they're being sort of religiously told not to. But you can't. It's not the lack of getting it off and getting it out. It's the lack of sexual touch. It's the lack of touch in general. And I don't want to go straight into that suppression, but it is right on the bottom of Maslow's pyramid. It's the kind of thing that babies die without, just being touched, that sort of thing. And if it's possible to systemically or systematically prevent a certain group from experiencing that sense, then yeah, I don't want to fuck around with the word oppression, but it needs to be that sort of thing needs to be acknowledged for what it is. If it can be shown that a certain group is being systemically denied touch, and it's a very long discussion. Are men being systematically denied touch and women are not? I think it's quite arguable, right?
Yeah.
Well, at the very least, men are being demonized for craving touch. Men are being demonized for acknowledging that aspect of their humanity, that they have a need for human contact. And you know, this may sound conspiratorial, but over the last several years, there's been an increase in the division between men and women and between boys and girls because of feminist ideology and feminist activism, and now more girls and women are committing suicide as well. They've eliminated or significantly reduced intimacy between the sexes in general. And now that more women and girls are experiencing that lack of human contact and lack of human intimacy, guess what? Now there's more suicide among women and girls. And that's probably not the only cause. I imagine that the increased capacity for relational aggression that the internet brings may have something to do with it. The increased capacity for public humiliation as well, and there are probably other factors as well. But I would be very interested to see that looked into as one factor. The reduction in human intimacy as a factor in the increase in human suicide in both sexes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we've tried. There've been efforts to address the symptoms by creating the porn industry, and now they're trying to make that illegal. And then we've created the games industry. All right, we can't have porn, we might as well do this. Oh, now they're fucking with that as well. Every time we try to treat the problems of being denied touch, that thing gets criminalized by certain fucking lobby groups, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it's almost like they want things that way. All right, let's see. Where was I on the PowerPoint? While Berlatsky believes, quote, it's true that white feminists have at times weaponized stereotypes about the hypermasculinity and violence of marginalized men. There goes that white feminist thing again that I was bringing up from before. He is quick to point out the penal system is not run by feminists, but people like Trump calling Mexicans rapists grind up other men for political gain and their egos. But I don't know how he got dragged into this, but it's sort of like it's an invoke.
Trump in there.
Yeah, just gotta invoke. Yeah, gotta invoke the T. Gotta invoke the word. But basically, to reiterate, it's true that white feminists have at times weaponized stereotypes about the hypermasculinity and the violence of marginalized men, but the penal system isn't run by feminists. It's run by people like Trump that call
really?
Yes.
Yeah, the fact that the laws that govern the reaction the courts have to violence when men do it Our
the
our
legislative
feminist
system
lobbied laws.
is run by feminists. The penal system is run by screws. You know, people with the physical fortitude to do it and the mental fortitude to do it, which is usually men, except in juvenile institutions. Let's not get into that. But yeah, it's the legislative positions that are run by feminists. The positions where you sit on a fucking chair and tell people what to do.
But unfortunately, the things that they're telling people to do, the people that are following that orders are following orders that were given to them on behalf of feminists. This is just the little area, and because it is in criminal law, it's a little area of domestic violence, is an example. We've had laws responding to domestic violence for as long as the country has existed. People don't believe that, but it's true. In fact, it used to be that the response to domestic violence, the legal response to domestic violence, was a whipping post. And in the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, there were judges that were advocating bringing back the whipping post. You can't bring something back if it never was. But bringing back the whipping post for wife beaters, not for domestic violence by both sexes, just wife beaters. There's always been a legislative response to domestic violence against women. And in the 70s, feminists started fighting to use that to break down due process. And they started with the shelter movement, which they took over from people who were, in particular Aaron Pizzey, but also others who were attempting to use extrication and therapy as a means of breaking the cycle. They fought for gendered law in order to use domestic violence to break down due process rights, and in the long run put more people in jail. Whether that's what they were doing on purpose or whether that was a badly thought out process that led to a terrible side effect, the impact on men and the impact in the penal system is totally feminists' fault. They fought until they got laws that funded shelters, and when the laws funded shelters that were gender neutral, they fought to change them. They fought until they got increased legal response and increased law enforcement response to domestic violence. And when that response was gender neutral, they fought to gender it. So yeah, this is 100% feminist fault. Absolutely.
But thank goodness it was only those white feminists, right?
We just need to get rid of them and get the good intersectional Neapolitan feminists in there. They're going to do it right.
It's just the feminists with the white fathers that are doing it wrong. You could be a little bit white and a feminist as long as your father was above here on this series of paint colors we have. I think we call it Moroccan cocoa. As long as your father is below that in terms of pitch, then you're fine.
Every time I see white feminists brought up, you can almost replace that phrase with like reverse racism. It's like, no, it's not reverse racism. It's just racism.
Yeah.
It's not white feminism. It's just feminism.
It's true. That's why I'm saying it's very clever. This sort of, I know that people are delighting in the whole they're eating their own thing, but if you keep on supporting that idea that, hey, you know, the attack, let's attack the white feminists, you're still feeding the beast. You're just feeding the other one. So I think that let's just criticize feminism in general, regardless of my anti-feminism knows no color, is what I'm saying. I'm blind to color. I don't see it. I don't see color. I just see feminism. So
well, and they're eating their own thing is effective if they're eating their own. It's not effective if their opponents do it. It actually gives them ammunition if their opponents are trying to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's an attack from outside. And
some systems have the death penalty for apostasy. Would that be categorized in the same way? Wait, what were you just talking about?
Yeah.
I remember the thing I analogized, but I don't remember the thing I was analogizing to make that analogy.
About white feminism versus
attacking
other
attacking
feminism?
white feminism from the outside.
Oh yeah, there you go. It's yeah, it's not well. You can call it eating your own if you kill apostates, but that doesn't imply that your movement's going to die out. There are movements that kill apostates, you know, at the drop of a hat, and they're doing pretty well. It seems paradoxical, but its ruthlessness it can overtake even genetic imperative in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta make an example out of someone every now and then to keep everyone else in line.
That's right. How are you supposed to control people? I mean, educate people. Okay, so the crisis of masculinity that Peterson's fans talk about is deliberately vague, he writes. But, thankfully, our author has all the quantifiable data for us. Quote, there were close to 45,000 suicides in the U.S. in 2016. There were also approximately 38,000 gun deaths. There were around 2.3 million people in prison. Men bore the brunt of all of these problems. And yet, the solid, demonstrable problems facing men are rarely discussed. While the fictional crisis of men oppressed by a lack of sex has obsessed punitively serious pundits. Okay, so real quick, there's one thing I wanted to comment on as far as these numbers go. They talk about the 45,000 suicides. Now we know the majority of those suicides are men. Like the overwhelming majority of those suicides are men. And then they talk about the gun deaths, 38,000 gun deaths. Now this statistic is interesting because the majority of gun deaths are suicides by men. So these numbers, it's just important to put into perspective. And yes, there are a lot of men in prison as well, right? They bear the majority of these problems. See, he says that what Peterson's fans talk about is the crisis is deliberately vague. It's not vague. There's clearly a crisis. And it has to do with the fact that I think men can see that they don't have a lot of value. And it's not that they don't actually have value, it's that we don't value them. We don't value them for who they are, just like as people. That they don't have any inherent value. They only have some value if they earn it, and the fact is, most of the time, we're attacking men for that too. We call that toxic masculinity, success, competence. So, what is a man supposed to feel like? Especially a man that is more likely to be raised by a single mother, so not have a father present, more likely to spend most of his time being raised by the state, who is actually his parents, plural, from daycare to Head Start to kindergarten to grade school to high school to college. All through that, he learns that something is wrong with him because he's a man. And then we medicate them and we separate them from their families. And then they come out the other end and they're trying to find a date, but they're scared because they could be accused of rape or they could be accused of sexual assault. They don't know how to approach women correctly. They're on medication. They're struggling to be successful. When they accomplish something, they're told that it's because of their privilege. They're told that it's not due to their actual competence. Well, what do you expect is going to happen? Those are the things that are creating this crisis. And there's no one is celebrating masculinity without being demonized themselves or laughed at. So yeah.
You know, one of the
Go ahead.
See, one of the things that I've noticed, unfortunately, I've had enough people in my life commit suicide to see some patterns, is when you take away everything that you've told a person that they should strive for in their life. So you have somebody who you raised them to believe that it is his job to protect and provide for the women around him. That not only is he to seek value in life, but his value in life has to be wrapped up in women. And then you demonize him for living up to that, and you take it away from him, and then treat him as though there isn't another avenue for him to create a value for himself in life, to be somebody in his community, even if that somebody is just, the person who does this particular job that people need done. What has he got to live for? People do not live just for the sake of existing. I mean, a lot of people think they do. A lot of people think they're content to just drift through life and exist.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, nobody is. You feel like that because you haven't had your purpose taken away. And even if your purpose isn't huge, even if your purpose isn't dramatic, even if your purpose isn't something you can put your finger on and say, this is why I'm here. This specific one narrow definition of a thing is why I'm here. You have a sense of purpose. When you lose that sense of purpose, when that sense of purpose is attacked, when you're told you must have this as your sense of purpose and shame on you for living up to it, it's deadly. And the reason that more men are committing suicide is because that sense of purpose that gets defined for men by society is largely wrapped up in responsibility for other people's welfare. And now it's under attack. How dare you be responsible for other people's welfare? How dare you be responsible for your own welfare? How dare you give a shit about your own welfare while you're being responsible for other people's welfare? How dare you expect to be treated like taking responsibility for other people's welfare is a good thing when you do it? All of these things combined turn around to steal and destroy the sense of purpose that men and boys need in order to want to live. You take away someone's will to live, all you have left is the will to die. And it becomes very, very easy to give into that.
Yeah. There was something else. You know what? I'm going to finish off the thing because there was something else I wanted to add. So, part of the reason why this happens is that the men most harmed by the real crises are black, brown, poor, and mentally ill, and so are easier to ignore or erase. And part of the reason is that a narrative about women and feminists oppressing men seems dramatic and counterintuitive. A narrative about powerful men oppressing less powerful men is less exciting and requires more self-reflection. So that's his argument. Indeed, men need more feminism in their lives, the more gender equality, and a relaxation of rigid and counterproductive gender norms. So, all the suffering in the world is created by men, and when men suffer, that's also created by men, because feminism doesn't have any power. It couldn't possibly be responsible, and how could you say feminism hurt men because the only thing it cares about is equality? The usual.
I also got to call some bullshit there, talking about how the real crisis is black and brown men. Actually, no. The staggering, overwhelming majority of suicides are white men.
Yeah, well, that's another attempt to divide too, because this is the thing, and I've seen this with feminism across the board, like in every iteration, in every incarnation, all of the, I don't even call them waves of feminism anymore. I call them stages of feminism. They're like cancer has stages. Like from stage 1 to stage 4 feminism, whenever they bring up men in the context outside of white men, so they say black men, brown men, Hispanic men, trans men, gay men, bisexual men, Muslim men, whatever, they ignore the man half of that and they focus on the other half. Whether it's the race or the nationality or the sexual orientation or, whether they're cis or trans, right? And it's a way of like sort of that's what intersectionality is for, is to let them continue to talk about and include other sort of protected groups under the umbrella of feminism, but while also cleverly leaving out cleverly leaving out the man part. And it also divides men against each other because they basically say, well, most of the people in prison are black men, not just men, but blacks specifically. Well, they get to basically divide men by race and turn them against each other, you know, without them realizing that the majority of problems faced by people of all races, men face more of the problems. Is a group, men in general. Yes, white men, like you were saying, they're far and away more likely to commit suicide. But the thing is, it's like they're trying to get people to look at the race part of it. And the fact is that most of the problems that black men, brown men, Muslim men, the trans men, gay men, they face them because they're men more than because of the other identifiers. I was doing a Orwell and Good. I had him on the show yesterday, and we were talking about it. I think I brought this up while I was on MGTOW Talks with I Am Serious over the weekend. It's homosexual men that had to fight to get all of their, you know, to essentially be able to live freely, to be able to buy property, marry other men, etc., like live to exist in the world, right? It was homosexual men that had to work at that, not lesbians. Nobody cares about lesbians. Nobody cares. But the way that feminists organize things is they always put women on top. Black men now are as privileged as white men now under intersectionality because they're men. So it doesn't matter that you're black, although you are useful to power up movement like Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a feminist organization that only exists because of all the black men that died that they've been able to use. But they don't actually care about black men. They don't even care about black people. They care about their ideology, which at its root is still feminism. So this is just, it's all a manipulation. None of it is actually trying to accomplish anything. And whenever you see men of color, you know, gay men, trans men, etc., it's all bullshit because they don't care about men. Nobody cares about trans women either. Like women who transition into men, they pretty much blend in. Like I knew a few, that's not a big deal. Trans men are the ones that have most of the problems. And they're also the majority of transitions. 70% of people who transition are men transitioning to women.
Okay, you're saying that backwards. Men transitioning to women or trans women. Women transitioning into men or trans men.
Oh, okay. Women transitioning to men. Trans women are the men transition. That's what I mean. Women who transition and become men make up the overwhelming majority of people who transition at all. And that should be something I think it's something worth thinking about why that is. You know, not that there's a problem with it, but you should think about that. Why is it the majority going one way?
I have my suspicion about it. I suspect that part of the reason, and I wouldn't say this is the entire cause or the cause in every case, but part of the reason is that in terms of being gender atypical, it is more socially accepted to be gender atypical if you are female than it is to be gender atypical if you are male. In other words, men's gender roles are more narrowly defined. And because of that, a person who experiences any degree of gender dysphoria due to being gender atypical, if that person is female, it's going to cause them less emotional distress and less cognitive dissonance than if the person is male biologically. And I think that has an impact on whether or not the individual feels the need to change biologically to match what's going on in their head. Mm-hmm. That's not an explanation for the entire phenomenon by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe it's a contributing factor.
Right, but that was another thing I was thinking about is if being a man is so great, if men have it so good, why are more men turning into like becoming women and so few women are turning into men? Why wouldn't all the women try to just be men so they can get that privilege? And why would the men want to become women?
If you're already trans, if you're already experiencing gender dysphoria, you're already at a very high risk of suicide. So you probably think, well, if I become a woman, at least that'll lower the risk.
Yeah, there you go.
That was a joke, but you never know what goes on subconsciously, eh?
Yeah. I mean, it's just an interesting thing to think about. So all of the, all these groups that feminists, especially intersectional fourth stage feminists, believe they want to protect. There are a lot of men in there, and they are a big part of what is often propped up as the issues that group faces, not the women. People are not concerned with Muslim women. People are concerned with Muslim men. Right?
Speaking of cancer, they say cancer has no stage 5. Stage 4 is total metastasis followed by death. This is what we can look forward to in fourth wave feminism. Everyone's toxic. Everyone must pay. All shall fall.
Everything is sexist. Everything is racist, and we just have to point it all out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, just in case this is all one great metaphor for the cancerous death of the giant who is dreaming the universe. Food for thought.
Oh my God. The West has cancer.
Well,
right.
And the other end of this, feminists bitch up and down all about supposed cultural appropriation. But what are they doing when they latch on to this perceived victimhood of various groups and speak for the perceived victimhood of various groups, not only purporting themselves to be authorities on this perceived victimhood of various groups, but also the spokespeople for those groups, even to the degree of contradicting members of those groups who disagree with their victim narrative. I mean, that's appropriation as well. That's experience appropriation. That's identity appropriation. It's victimhood appropriation. They're doing that which they accuse and living it, and whether they eat themselves or not, by throwing that victimhood at each other. And I think they will, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that they do from the inside. But whether they do or not, it's going to start with that appropriation, that actual appropriation.
Yep. Well, because they're the ones that get to accuse, they won't ever accuse each other or themselves. So last thing I want to say on this. So this Father's Day, maybe reflect on why you're toxic. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Think Guy.
Oh, but they said they're not calling masculinity toxic. Well, there you go.
Well,
now they are.
Well, it's restrictive masculinity now, Hannah. It's restrictive masculinity. They're rebranding.
No need to worry. I've located the gland. I've located the toxic gland that men have right next to the thyroid, and I'm attempting to dig it out. Fortunately, they made everything illegal except fish slices. So wish me luck.
Mike J, do you want to say anything on this story at all, or you've been silent? Or are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Probably sure I had something good to say, but then I lost it.
It's okay.
We've been reading out all the good things you've had to say.
Yeah, I have.
Damn you guys.
Yeah, I read your things. So you did have a lot of great commentary. We just, you weren't here at the time. But it was fantastic. So let me read some super chats and then we'll close it out. Go over here. Let's see where we were. Field of Bears gives us $2 and writes Rome. That's it. That should summon Allison into the chat, if she was able to. Daniel Peck.
That's the classicalist equivalent of 420 Blazer. Isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Rome,
that's right.
bro.
Rome. Rome is the light. I've seen much of the world. It's dark. Daniel Peck gives us $10 Australian and says, I hate how feminist crap has infiltrated pop culture like comic books and Magic the Gathering, even trying to infiltrate Warhammer 40k. Well, that's the way feminism works, man. These leftist things, they basically infiltrate the culture. Change the culture, you change the politics, change the world. That's the goal, That's why they're doing
you say
that.
Trying to
I know.
infiltrate Warhammer. Warhammer 40K. I got some bad news for you, buddy.
They're in there. It's in there, and the geeks that run it, the geeks that they fuel it, and they pay into it, and they allowed it. They've actually not allowed it. They have given it life, breathed life into it, and made it as big as it is. They are laying down and letting the feminists do it, because that's what they do. Because that's what men do. Because they love women, even women who hate them. That it's very unhealthy, but it's true. And it doesn't stop there.
Whereas women only love men who hate them. We're a kind of fucked up species.
Yeah, I don't know how we lasted this long.
Well, I've exaggerated that, as we've often discussed. Women will be more interested in you if you're less interested in them. There's so many paradoxes to learn, young, and good luck.
It's true.
It's almost like people like to flirt and challenge each other and test each other on the way to the formation of a relationship, and maybe feminists just don't get it.
Yep. Frank Tomeo gives us $2 Canadian and says, "Good luck to all those in the EU on Article 13. I hope that you guys don't lose your memes. Please fight to keep your memes. We will be doing a story on that later."
That's the copyright thing, the intellectual property thing, isn't it?
I think it is.
Intellectual property laws are about to become crazier than the ones in the United States.
Mm-hmm. They're going to lose their memes if it goes through. Frank Teo gives us another $2 Canadian and says, "Feminism is cancer." It is. We're at stage 4. Daniel Peck gives us $10 Australian and says, "I have nothing but contempt for tyrants clothing themselves in good deeds. May maggots lace their entrails." Oh, I like that. Was very.
Why would you wish
poetic.
something so horrible on something so innocent as a maggot?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even have brains, man. They're just living their lives. They just are hungry.
Maggots didn't do nothing. They're good boys. Field of Bears.
Hurry up and become a fly, you lazy cunt.
Yes. Field of Bears gives us $2 and writes, "JBP's entire message is about introspection." Absolutely. It's not political. It's just people looking for meaning.
So what you're saying is, Brian.
Yes. I mean, Allison asked me about Peterson. She said, why are people following him? Why do they like him so much? Just trying to understand it. And I said, well, even Peterson doesn't really get it. He is surprised. He even said in an interview, when that which was common has become, really rare, then it becomes really valuable, almost treasured. And the thing that was missing, fathers was the main thing. Yeah, that's just it. That's what he's looking. That's what the people are looking for. But more than that, they're looking for someone to give men a sense of purpose and responsibility while also valuing them as people, giving them that, I care about you. I want you to do well. I want to let me give you some encouraging words. Please go out into the world and make something of yourself and make the world better. Men want that. They crave that. Right? They're not getting it. So
boys and girls want that.
Yeah,
and when we were kids, they got it from their dads and their coaches and male teachers and men in their churches, men in their communities who were mentors. Mm-hmm. Men have been removed almost entirely as mentors for children. They're not allowed. They're not even allowed to be dads, much less. You don't see a lot of men mentoring in other positions. You don't see a lot of male teachers in elementary schools. You don't see very many men working with children, directly with children, without women's interference anywhere anymore. They're craving that. Kids, right on up to the college level, are craving that. That's why they seek out Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
he's like the modern society's advisory dad. Not necessarily the authority end of dad, but the dad that says, think about this before you do it.
Yeah, young men. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, if I could relate Jordan Peterson to anyone else in history who's kind of had a similar role, I'd say Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Yeah, if intersectional feminists and progressives of today were sent back in time to the 70s, they would crucify Mr. Rogers.
It's true. And again, you know, it's Peterson himself has said that he doesn't think that the things that he's saying are all that revolutionary. It's not even that he's the one doing it. It's that he's the only one doing it that has the platform that he has. You know, and I hope that on some level we're able to also give men a sense of encouragement. I know that a lot of the stories that we do on the show can be, you know, pretty black pilly and depressing and stuff, but it's just to help you guys see like everything that's going on in the world, and hopefully you recognize that I honestly believe at this point that we're not up against something that is insane. We're up against something that is insidious. And I'm not saying the people are this way. I think the ideology is this way. It doesn't care about what gets ruined, and it doesn't actually have something that stands for other than itself. And I really want to be able to help men in the same way that Peterson does. I just, you know, I'm not on his level. So we need more people to talk about this stuff that he does. And I agree. It's not a revolutionary idea, but I think that it, especially with younger men, it is taken for granted by us, you know, that had fathers and that know what was missing. Like I had my father. So I want to say again to those of you guys who are watching, happy Father's Day. I'm not going to participate in all this bullshit. I think that fathers are absolutely critical, and it's probably one of the most important crises that we're facing in our society right now, more than the toxic masculinity thing, which is something that really pisses me off. I think if we have that situation fixed, I think a lot of the other stuff will just fall into place. A lot of it, not all of it. It's a start, let's put it that way. So does anybody else have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, as we've kind of established, young men who have sort of a father-shaped hole in their life are more likely to be drawn to father figures like Jordan Peterson. Whereas young women who have a father-shaped hole in their life are more likely to be drawn to a hypergamous conveyor belt of macho knuckleheads going in and out of the old cooch there. That doesn't mean girls have bigger problems. It just means they're not dealing with those same problems as perhaps as well as men are. Even though when men go to someone like Jordan Peterson, they are told by the mainstream media not to do such a thing. But there's no female equivalent of Jordan Peterson attracting a female audience by conveying the message, take some damn responsibility in your life. There's no professor up there saying, stop chasing substitute fathers up your own vajayjay, you dumb fuck. Because that would just twist everyone's knickers instantly.
It does. You should see the reaction I get when I just from talking about women taking responsibility for their own reproductive choices. Just taking that little area, you know, you have all of these options, you have all of these capabilities, you can make all of these choices, and they're your choices. So if you make a series of choices and you end up at a result, that result is a lifestyle choice. Oh my God, you would think that I had just blamed women for all of the ills of the world, and it's rape culture, and it's this, and it's that. There can't be a female Jordan Peterson because society is bent on making excuses for women's bad choices. And women in general, the majority of women, the vast screaming majority of women even female MRAs, even critics of feminism, even the best female feminist critics of feminism, the ones who know it from the inside, who are still labeling themselves feminist and manage to criticize everything about feminism, will have a gynocentric freak out over being told that when women make bad choices, women are responsible for the consequences of their bad choices, and that it is damaging to women to take that responsibility away and put it on men. They freak the fuck out over that. So the women of the men's rights movement who do have that conversation, who do say, you are responsible when you fuck up your life, and the person best equipped to fix it is you, and the person most responsible for fixing it is you. And even if somebody gives you a leg up in the process, you still have to do the bulk of it yourself. Just saying that to women is an attack on all of femininity. And until that changes, there cannot be a female Jordan Peterson. All there can be are female MRAs who are demonized, absolutely demonized, for talking to women the way Jordan Peterson talks to men.
Absolutely, absolutely. Although Peterson has said that his female base is also growing a lot, and he has spoken to that, saying that, you know, women, there is a masculine side to women as well. And I think he's saying that, you know, it's responsibility that he's talking about. He's calling it masculine, but I think he means it's symbolized by masculinity more than anything.
Well, it makes sense to call it masculine because up until this point, responsibility has been a largely masculine characteristic in modern society. It's not always been that way, but it is, you know, and honestly, I would say if there was a potential female Jordan Peterson with a similar platform, because I mean, this Allison and Karen and I have all talked about the same kind of things in terms of women. That Peterson talks about in terms of men, but our platform is different from his. A similar platform, you know, I mean, everybody's probably going to refer to Based Mom, but I think Janice Fiamingo is probably more equipped because she's not trapped in the throes of feminist gynocentrism. And as great as Christina Hoff Sommers can be at criticizing the senselessness of gender feminism, she still is a feminist who identifies as a feminist and can occasionally be, I'd say, dysfunctionally gynocentric. It's a rare thing for her, but I think Janice Fiamingo one-ups her on that and is probably the closest you're going to get to a professor doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's that, because the thing is with Christina Hoff Sommers, she does still, you can't just attack feminism without offering something to fill the feminist shape hole, which is a really big and deep hole, by the way. You have to have something else that fills the void, right? So part of it has to be personal accountability. So there's like, okay, stop using this ideology to play victim. All right, so I've done that. Now what? Well, you need something else. Well, then it's time for you to take personal responsibility and hold yourself accountable for your choices and realize that you're part of a larger whole of people making decisions and choices, and that everything that happens to you, you have to look at your part to play in it. That would be what I think someone like Janice Fiamingo would offer. Or Esther Viller, somebody said, is another one. But I think Janice, because she is a professor and everything else, I think she'd be great for that. So I got some super chats. Zeranx gives us $5. It says, I think Peterson being as popular as he is and how fast it happened is evidence that the most important parts of our culture have been left to fester. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those... That could have been anybody, really. It just so happened that it was him. When you think about what he offers that people respond to, it just so happens that he was the guy. But again, he's even said it himself. He doesn't think that he's talking about anything new. Cyberzerk gives us 50 seconds and says, JBP is very good in his field, and he's a genius with words, but I'm afraid people are wearing him out as the next messiah for everything. Well, that's just because he's the only voice that's out there that at the level that he's at, and the media is making him big, dude, because they keep attacking him in some way, and they bring him on their news program, and they try to debate him, and they try to destroy him, and he ends up wrecking them because he's too smart for their journalists. And then he gets bigger and bigger. It's a snowball effect that the media is creating. And I think that anybody could...
think they would have learned after Trump.
Yeah, you think that, right? And the thing is that anybody... Yes, there should be... He shouldn't be the only person talking about it. But he's being put in this position not by his own doing, but because of everyone else. And that's why more of us should be talking about... I mean, we do talk about this stuff, you know? We don't talk about the same things that he does, but this is not a consequence of people choosing to make Peterson something bigger than he is. We know he's flawed. We know he's only human. We know he's not right about everything. I don't agree with him on everything that he believes, but I like the message, and I'm not going to attack the guy just because, you know, not everything I think he's missing out on a couple of things, right? But more voices are needed. If you don't want to create a messiah, then you got to make more voices. And I don't think that he'd have a problem with that.
It's not just the soundness of his message, it's that he's very proficient at delivering it. Does anyone remember the first time they saw or heard of Jordan Peterson? Because I think for most people it was that video someone filmed outside university where it had a bit of a...
About free speech.
Yeah, it was about trans things, and there was a white noise machine that some sort of transistor W's had brought out, and they started playing the white noise machine over him so he couldn't talk. And you know, his reaction to that was to sort of calmly but firmly, sort of, I don't know if it was him who turned off the white noise machine or whatever, but he didn't show any flustering. He just raised his voice. Made his eyes a little bit more firm and carried on talking, you know, like this is something he does all the time. I think that's largely why he's popular, because people see shit like that and they think, okay, this guy, there's something a bit different about this guy. There's some fortitude in there that's a little bit more inspiring than your average person, you know?
Absolutely. Cyberzerg says that he fears for his health and safety. I think that's fair, but maybe that's the reason why. Maybe if Peterson's voice is the only voice that's trying to, let's say, call for reason, and maybe try to help men. I think that he's put in this position where he's realizing that men are indeed in crisis. This article that I'm responding to, I responded to it not because Peterson was in the article. I didn't even know he was. I responded to it because it was trying to use Father's Day, which we just had, to essentially promote feminism and attack men by basically calling masculinity toxic, right? That was why I chose the article. And it just so happened he uses Peterson. And the only reason why he invokes it is because it's probably more likely to get clicks on Think. Fucking cnbcnews.com/think. So I didn't really do it because of the Peterson thing, but I think the only reason why Peterson comes up is because he is the guy. He is the idol that has to be torn down by social justice warriors. If they can do it, then the battle is over and they can resume the erosion of the West. They can go back to what they were doing, but he is an obstacle. And so we need to make sure that he is not the only obstacle. We have to also become obstacles. Peterson shouldn't be doing this by himself. And I mean, I don't think he is, but he is the biggest person, right? Well, for a while, it was Milo. And then, for whatever reason, Milo went on Bill Maher, and then the whole, priest pedophile thing came out. And as far as the left is concerned, he is no longer a threat, so they left him alone. And he hasn't been able to he hasn't made any really big appearances since. And as far as anything goes, that idol has been destroyed or defeated, right? So Peterson's the next one. They just got to find something, take it down, and then they can go about their business. I think this is going to be a lot more difficult than egg to crack, but it shouldn't be the only one. We should all be doing this if you feel this way.
You know, I think part of the reason that he ends up mentioned in articles like this is just the same as the type that does this. They have to virtue signal to each other over particular issues and particular political talking points and everything. They have to political opponent signal. There's got to be a better way to describe that, but it's essentially the same type of virtue signaling. The talking point is, I hate this guy. You guys hate this guy and I hate this guy, so I'm one of you. And they've been doing it. I've noticed this like forever. You go to argue any particular issue that has a maybe left-right perspective on it, and you argue it with somebody on the right. They start bringing up Bill Clinton, and they start bringing up Obama, and they start bringing up anybody else that happens to be an icon of the left that is particularly hated by the right, or has been particularly heavily criticized by the right. And the same thing on the left. You get past presidents that were on the right, but you also get Rush Limbaugh. I had actually was arguing something this morning, and somebody brought up Limbaugh, and I missed it at first. I went, who? Because they didn't say Rush Limbaugh, and I was kind of half awake, and so I didn't even think of who they were talking about. I'm like, where did this come from? It hits you weird when you're not fully awake, but this is a common thing, and so Peterson has become one of those icons that they have to virtue mention as, I hate this guy. And just the same as Trump, just the same as political pundits. You know, you've made it when you've become the next anti virtue signaling talking point, where they have to name you as the bad guy in order to virtue signal for their friends.
That's why Jank got Karen on his show, because he wanted to destroy her, and it just made him look like an asshole. So you just need the right people. Like somebody mentioned that, you know, Milo is just like a photo negative of an SJW. I think that one of the things that hurt Milo was that he didn't have quite the same moral center that Peterson has. Peterson's a lot harder to crack, not only because he speaks well, but I think that he has his principles in order, and it's going to be very difficult. But I mean, I think that this is par for the course. This could be anybody's name in this article. It doesn't even matter. Anybody, whoever is the voice of reason at the time. So Frenchinator 2 gives us $5 and says, a woman wants men to clean her house. She said Peterson is an MRA. Lol, he's not an MRA. So Peterson wouldn't acknowledge that he's an MRA, but he certainly is helping us. I mean, he's addressing issues, right? So,
are you spelling that in uppercase? Is that
yes, it's a capital MRA, yeah.
Oh, well, that's completely different then. He's not one of those.
Oh, no, he's not one of those. He's advocating for men's issues, though. Okay, so...
What is it that Allison says? If you verb the noun...
Yeah.
If you're doing the thing, you don't need to say you're explicitly the thing you're doing.
Well,
but if you're doing the thing, then...
They say the men's rights movement has been around for a century and hasn't achieved anything. I get the feeling for most of that century, they've been renaming themselves, rebranding themselves into something like Meninism or something like the men's issues movement or something. And every fucking time they get the same reaction. Yeah, okay, these are legitimate issues, but just don't call yourself that because it freaks everyone out. So eventually people went, okay, fuck it with the names, fuck it with the groups. We're just going to call this what it literally is. We're just going to name this thing we're doing after the literal verb that it is. And that didn't stop them. That didn't stop them in their tracks at fucking all. They're still carrying on with the script. Please don't call yourself that, but it's the verb I'm doing. Yeah, but just call yourself something else. And I promise we won't just go around this fucking merry-go-round again.
I'm just describing the thing that's happening. Zerax gives us $5 and says, I think Peterson being as popular as he is and how fast it happened is evidence that the most important parts of our culture have been... I already read that. I'm sorry. Where am I? Esther Viller is, Zarians gives us $2 and says, Esther Viller is close to JBP, just too obscure. She's bit triggering too, huh? Tyler Preston is $5, says, how long will feminists make excuses for female domestic/sexual abusers by blaming the male sex?
Forever.
As long as feminism is in existence.
Yep. And past that, when they stop calling it feminism, they call it something else. Women protecting. Frenchinator 2 gives us $2 and says, feminist-shaped hole is big, long, and dry. Frenchinator 2 gives us $5 and says, with this movement, JBP is the person we need, not the person we want. The atheists won't stop reeing. Peterson is not endorsing religion. No.
So what you're saying is he's Batman.
This is true. He's even making people that you would not think would be upset really, really upset, like TJ Kirk and Cult of Dusty. Maybe that's what we need as well. Although I never thought I'd even give a shit. Leads in a Hat gives us £2 and says, this is a Badger Cave of residents.
I think we might have met Resistance.
No, there's only 4 people in the world who'll reference it. The reference I think it is. I think that's John.
It's a thing that happened. Well,
there's only 5 people in the world who understand that reference if it includes the person that's taking the piss out. It's long story short, this is why you get a hotel instead of a B&B, so you don't get someone bursting in saying, "Stop talking to your friends. This is a place of residence." In jokes.
Daniel Peck, $10 Australian, says, ever need reminding of what feminism truly is? Remember the Mattress Girl saga. Yes.
I'd rather not.
Well, I can't. It's burned in my memory. But waifu pillow guy, that's an art project that I can get behind. But with all that being said, I think we're gonna go into the after show. Wait, French Honey Badger and Capistan has just called and gives us $5 and says, Cult of Dusty is a chicken without a head. Of course he get triggered by JBP. Yeah.
That's exactly what he is. He's kind of he's a woke hipster and a virtue signaler at the same time. Now, by my own law, that's impossible.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's this is why he's the guy who said, everyone shut up about SJWs. They're not the problem. You're an SJW, Dusty. You're one of them. But you just happen to be a fucking woke hipster as well.
Well, and they got to talk about it like not being the problem means you aren't a problem. Regardless of whether you can say social justice warriors are the problem, they are definitely a problem.
Mm-hmm. Another...
An iteration of the problem, if you will.
Yes. Another donation.
It's often a weird sticking point in the argument where SJW as an initialism and MRA as an initialism. I mean, they both, in theory, describe something literally, but depending on which camp you're in, one is a euphemism for a fucking ideological terrorist group, and the other is exactly what they say they are.
French Air 2 gives us $2 and says, Wizard of Cause is another person that hates JBP. Well, I don't know. I assume that there are people who are probably like, I know for a fact there are people out there that are just like, oh, he's overrated. I see too much of him. They're just kind of fatigued by JBP. But, you know, this isn't superhero movies. This is important conversations. So maybe if you don't like the fact that he's getting so much attention, maybe just make better content. And maybe you can be the person that gets the attention. Try to improve what you're talking about.
Like when things get sort of bottlenecked into a single charismatic figure, that is often a point where shit starts to go wrong. That's why I've certainly never considered running for political office or advising anyone else in my field of politics to go into that.
Get good, Scrubs, is what I'm saying.
Get good, but try and do it as okay, I don't know how to try to do it without celebrity cultism, which is bizarre because that's a manifestation of individualism. Because what I'm saying is, don't follow individuals, follow collective movements. But this is another one of those paradoxes that exists when you're trying to get to terms with individualism and collectivism. This is one way in which individualism can go too far, because it's easier to revere an individual than it is to revere a group, I think, because you can only fit 150 people in your head. It's a Dunbar number because of tribes. So it stands to reason you've only got so much space in your head for characters you've heard of, so you're more likely to, if there's one character that you can lay all of this shit on, then you're more likely to do that just because it's the path of least resistance. But it's not necessarily a good thing, because celebrity cults get really fucking wacky, you know. I mean, like I said, the larger the audience, the more likely you are to find wacky people.
Yeah.
But you know, people tend to burn fast and burn out quickly, well, whatever the adage is, when they get celebrity cultified. So it's, you know, it's advisable to keep that to keep it in check. This will never work if we make it about individuals. Certainly not about culty celebrities. It needs to be about principles.
Absolutely. That, I guess, what to add a caveat to what I was saying about getting good. I think that people who criticize individuals for their achievements, despite the fact that they're making really good arguments, and that is likely the basis for their popularity, I would recommend that if you're going to get good, what I mean is, look at what you're saying, look at what you're talking about, look at the content you're creating, and try to make the best content that you can in the area that you have interest, with a focus on what you think you can offer the most people that others aren't offering. If you don't like the kind of discussion that Peterson is having regarding men's crises, the West, politics, whatever, then just talk about what you think that he's not talking about. And don't do it in necessarily an anti-Peterson critical way. Just like talk about it in general. Let the people come to you that want to hear what you have to say. That's what I'm saying. You know, most of the people who, when we went to Australia, we got to meet Bering and Sugar Tits. And Bering has an enormous YouTube channel. But you wouldn't know it because he's one of the humblest and down-to-earth people I've ever met. He's just a good guy who doesn't let this thing get to his ego, because in his mind, what he's doing isn't necessarily more revolutionary than, hey, I'm just putting my ideas, music, and comedy out there, and people like it. But it doesn't mean that Bering doesn't see himself as some kind of a spiritual leader. He's just a guy sharing ideas. And I think that
he's already happy. He's been a rock star. He's got pretty much the perfect wife. Probably got a huge dick. So he's just like, come at me, bro. Pretty much.
So there you go. You know, just look at it that way. All right. It's really, really time for me to go, because we got to do the after show. Let me just read the last super chat I got in here. Zeranx gives us $2 and says, J. Jonah Jameson is what I'm assuming that stands for. Didn't like Spider-Man. Sucks to be him. All right. So that was a lesson. Haters gonna hate that J. Jonah Jameson was the original. Autism is a feminist issue. We're going to talk about this in the after show. I am curious to see what they're going to say, because last time I checked, more men were affected by autism than women. So I want to know how this is a feminist issue. I mean, I know how. It's probably got something to do with toxic masculinity or something. I don't know. We'll see. So if you want to join us in the after show, please become a patron by going to patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And depending on your level of donation, you will either be a audience member where you'll be able to watch the show and comment in the YouTube chat like you guys are doing now, or if you give a little more, you can join us on the Discord and get into the show where you can talk about the topic with us. So please consider doing that. Also, one more reminder, go to the Feed the Badgers, you can help us get to the UK for the ICMI 2018. It's going to be a very exciting time. A lot of people are going to be there. Cassie J is going to be there. She says that she wants to do a follow-up interview with us. So I don't know if she's planning another movie or something, but she said she wants to talk to us. And I didn't get to talk to Cassie J in that format. I mean, I interviewed her a couple times, but not in these circumstances. So, but there'll be a lot of other people there, and it's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of very good information, new documentaries coming out and stuff like that. And we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. So again, go to feedthebadger.com and make a donation. Please help us get to the UK. I mean, Mike doesn't need it because he's already there, but the rest of us that are going will need your help. So with that said, I want to thank all of my co-hosts. Again, I apologize to Mike J for the time mistakes. My bad on that. And I want to thank you guys for coming on this week's HBR News Show. We'll see you guys in the after show. And for those of you who we won't see in the after show, we'll see you guys next time.